Hello everyone, you are here for the Leveraging Rich Photorealistic Content in Unreal Engine. I am Sam Anderson. I will start this off with the introduction about myself and what we'll be covering today. I am here representing Archvizion, so I'll give a little bit of history about Archvizion and their tools, and then work through a bunch of the Epic ecosystem tools. So I'm going to start with a slide, and then I will dive into a demo at the end, and it will mostly be talking about strategies and tips and tricks for adding different assets into your project. So if I haven't met you, I'm Sam Anderson. I do have an architecture background, so this talk will be a little more focused towards architecture, but not purely architecture. My background, I did study architecture. I actually looked to try to find my very first rendering here. I worked at Yaya Architects in Copenhagen, and I was working on a lot of competitions, and they taught me V-Ray and Rhino. And so it's been fun to kind of see the evolution of 3D tools throughout the years. So after my time at Yaya, I then went to Shop Architects. I was a visualization specialist there. And I spent a lot of time in the research and development of understanding how we can use real-time tools like Unity and Unreal Engine to show off the visual aspects of architecture and design. So after my time spending time in Unreal Engine developing VR experiences, Epic asked me to come on board. So I was at Epic for about 3 years, producing marketing material for the new releases for Unreal Engine and Twinmotion, and then also teaching creators such as yourself how to use the tools and the new features. So I have since gone out on my own, where I get to do all the different things. So I still produce architectural renderings for companies. I still do training for Epic and helping creators learn the new tools. And then I also do technical marketing, which is why I'm here today. So essentially what that means is I help companies market their products, and especially in the realm of 3D and understanding how they fit in with the other 3D tools in the ecosystem. So I am here today to represent Archvizion, so I'll talk about that there in a moment. But I do want to talk about one of the projects that I just worked on and talk a little bit about photorealism. So this is a project that I just finished up this summer. It's for the United Center in Chicago, and I worked with the Rios architecture team in LA. So when you approach photorealism, especially in the architecture space, there is a time and place for it. So in some cases, I needed to match a drone photo. So I wanted to make it look like the drone photo. So I used Unreal Engine for all of this. Now on the left-hand side, I have an image that's a little more colorful. It's a little more about storytelling. That one doesn't need to be photorealistic. It's more about talking to the community about the new plans that are coming into place. So I say that just because whenever you are diving into projects, it might be helpful to understand in which situations do you want to spend a little bit more time developing the realism, and then which projects do you want to just got to get it out quickly and just apply assets quickly to the project. So I'll kind of give that as like a broad stroke, and maybe sometime I can dive into this project further with you guys to explain how it all was built. But I'll be demoing another project today that we'll see a little bit later. And that project is a project that came from an Archvizion customer. So if you haven't heard of Archvizion, I am happy to introduce Archvizion to you. It has been in the industry for 20 years, so they have worked with a lot of different 3D platforms and programs. So as you are all probably have worked on some type of deliverable, whether it's architecture, automotive, film, you probably have experienced using a lot of different tools. You're working with team members who are using different platforms, and you are going to probably have licenses to a lot of different platforms. This is what Archvizion helps out with. They are a one-stop shop for Rhino, Unreal Engine, Twinmotion, V-Ray, Inkscape. You are able to have all of your purchasing options with one company. So if there is anyone out here who is on the IT side or purchasing side, you can imagine how much this helps with logistics and time and managing all of your 3D platforms with one place or in one place. Now, additionally, Archvizion has seen the 3D industry evolve over the years, and that means that they have seen where there might be a few things that are missing in the industry. So they do have some technology that we'll be talking about today that helps creators have consistency and cohesiveness among team members. So I also want to talk about a few things that I'm doing with Archvizion. So as part of my technical marketing, I help put on digital events or webinars to some degree. And if you are brand new to Unreal Engine or Twinmotion and want a more basic hand-holding this is how you get started opening up Epic Games Launcher and diving in, then one of these events might be for you. So, or if you know anyone who is looking to learn, this is a free digital event. Feel free to message me or find me and I can send you the Zoom link for that. But essentially, Archvizion is they're an incredible group, very genuine team, and they really want to support their customers and support creators such as yourself. So I'm assisting with this and would love to see some of you there, or if you want to share the resources with your teammates as well. So as I mentioned, Archvizion also has some technology that is helping fill the void. And so many years ago, they saw a need for assets that could work in all of these different platforms. So if you have ever downloaded something from TurboSquid and opened it up in one program, opened it up in another program, and they look completely different, this is what the RPC is trying to solve. So it is essentially a bundle of geometry that allows you to have the same visualization in all of those different platforms. So this can be very helpful for, perhaps art direction and film, or also in architecture, where you're working with different team members but want to see the same assets in those different programs. So this, if you have something in Inkscape, then you'll be able to see the same thing in Unreal Engine. So with Unreal, there is a plugin for RPCs, and we'll be showcasing that a little bit later today. Now, the RPC name got its origin from rich photorealistic content many years ago. Now, if you all are in the 3D world, so you probably understand that the term photorealistic in 3D has changed a lot. And a big thanks to Epic for that, for a lot of the MetaHuman advancements they've been doing. We start to get to much more photoreal end results. And so over time, the RPC has changed a little bit more to be focused more around platform agnostic. So as I mentioned, you are able to use these assets by different team members and have the same look and feel for those assets. So now I'm going to step away from Archvizion for just a moment and talk about all of the other offerings from Epic. Now, you probably are aware of a lot of these offerings. I am here to just give you a little more strategy of how you can use these to build out large projects. So we got Quixel. Everyone loves Quixel. Beautiful scanned geometry that is going to really push a lot of the assets to that photoreal look that you are going for. Now, some of the stuff that I'm talking about here will obviously change a little bit with Fab, but the things that I am trying to get a point across is more about the strategy and how to approach it. So I wanted to call out a few of the assets that I like to use the most. So this is going to be the foliage, materials, and decals. So foliage, if I get a project from someone in Rhino or Revit, I'm still replacing a lot of the foliage inside of Unreal Engine with Quixel assets. That's because these are real-time ready, they are ready to go, they look beautiful, you can't go wrong with them. That goes the same for the materials as well. If you're getting assets from other people, you don't know how they created their textures, you don't know if they're using power of 2 for their sizes, and that can become a headache later. So I usually switch my materials to Quixel materials inside of my projects. And then lastly, the decals. That's a very, I'll say, cost-efficient way for performance, for adding in a lot of detail without slowing down your performance or frames per second. Now we also have Twinmotion. So this is the easy-to-use, friendly tool for creators getting into real-time rendering. Now, the thing that is very helpful about Twinmotion is that they actually have the assets available to Unreal Engine users. So as of now, you can go to Twinmotion and you can go to the marketplace and get these assets that are ready for real-time and good to go. Now, once again, this will probably evolve with Fab a little bit, but these are available right now on the marketplace if you're interested. Now, one thing that I do like to talk about here is you'll notice that these are all in packs. So when you want to use one, you download the pack and then you add it to your project. What this is doing is it's adding a lot of assets that you may not need to your projects. So for instance, the entertainment pack, say I just need a playground, just one asset from there. I don't need to bring in that whole pack. So essentially what I like to do is I like to create what I call a migration project. And what this allows me to do is to have all of my favorite assets inside of that migration project. So then I can just import and curate certain assets that I want to bring in one at a time. Now, this can also be helpful because say you are downloading Unreal Engine 5.5 tonight, you want to add in one of these assets. It's probably not ready for 5.5 yet, but you can have a migration project for 5.4, 5.3, and be able to import that asset into your project. So these are what mine look like. They're not pretty at all. They're just simple projects that have some of my favorite assets in there. Now, not only can it have assets, but it can also have tools so that as you are working and really start to understand, I use this tool every single time I create a project, you could even just start to develop templates for yourself so that you are starting with a template of the tools that you know and love. And so I want to talk for a moment about some of my favorite tools that come with the Epic ecosystem. One of them is the Content Examples project. So I am a little more focused on rendering and styling, materials and lighting, less focused on blueprints and coding. So sometimes someone asks me to do something interactive. What I do is I go to the content examples, I learn from them, I migrate the tools to my migration project or to the project that I'm using, and I build out my project using that. So it's very helpful for anyone. Unreal Engine can be really robust. There's so many different parts and tools that you can use, and this can be a very helpful way for you to get the wheel turning on some of the education for that. Additionally, there is the Hillside project. If you are coming from the architecture background, you've probably played around with this, seen it, heard it, but I cannot emphasize how much I use this project. So this has editor utility tools and widgets that are extremely helpful for making sure that you are utilizing your project to the best of its abilities. There's also some stunning parametric materials that are helpful, and I have learned a lot from having to open this project up so many times. It takes a little bit of time for the first time you open it up. So now I just migrate all of my favorite tools from this project into that migration project, so then I can just open that up and move it over. So I did just want to showcase those two of things that you might want to check out if you haven't already. But now we have come to Sketchfab. So with Sketchfab, these are assets that are made by creators for creators. So it allows you to get a little more stylized if you liked, as well as a little more customized. So typically what I use Sketchfab for is photogrammetry assets that I want to bring into Unreal Engine. So you'll see here that I have a page of some earlier scans I've done of furniture in the real life space that I can bring into my 3D projects. What's nice about this is, you're getting the true grain of the asset. It's not tileable. It's, truly beautiful imagery that you can bring in. And so this is capable through the Reality Scan app with Epic Games. Essentially what you do is you walk around the asset, take photos, it creates a 3D mesh, and then you can bring it into Unreal Engine. So I don't do this for all of my assets. This is truly for very customized things. So if you're in the architecture space, if you have a sculpture that is very important for your project or artwork, I don't know how many times I've had to Photoshop different furniture images in my architectural past background and have to make sure I skewed it correctly to get the perspective. So this is really taking the amount of realism to the next level whenever you use photogrammetry. So essentially, once you scan your asset, you then transport it to Sketchfab or publish it to Sketchfab. Once you have it in Sketchfab, you are able to export it as several different file types. This includes FBX, OBJ, and GLTF, and GLB. So I just wanted to call this out for anyone who is going to explore this workflow. If you're bringing something in as a GLTF, you'll just want to make sure that you select the combined static meshes. So when you bring it in for the first time and don't have that selected, it will kind of come in as different point clouds. And so this brings it all in as one, and will save you a little headache from having to troubleshoot that. And last but not least, we have MetaHuman. So the beautiful photoreal digital humans that are available to you. If you do not have a background in animation or characters, I want to emphasize how easy it is to actually develop some of this stuff. So here is the MetaHuman creator. This is browser-based. You can go in and start to really manipulate, blend face shapes, build out your custom materials, and it gives you a lot of authorship whenever you're developing your assets for your projects. So you can also even scan yourself. So this is a scan of myself that I've done, brought it to a MetaHuman, and then you can drop it into your projects and play around with it. So you can make it interactive. This is just a fun level of someone who doesn't have any animation background. I was able to do this very easily. Now, for anyone who is wanting to really populate a scene, you do have some examples that you can refer to. So these are the city sample crowds. Many times I get asked if I use MetaHumans for a lot of my characters in my large architectural renderings, and the answer is no. I'm typically using pose characters from Twinmotion to have as people scattered throughout the space. But in foreground situations, I do bring in MetaHumans, and now with Unreal Engine 5.5, things will be a little bit easier now that we can apply Nani. But I do want to bring this as an example if you do want to explore a little more real-life characters in your scene. And so I kind of have a recap here of a lot of the different assets that I talked about. This is just going over some of the advantages, disadvantages, the tips. I pretty much covered a lot of this stuff here, but I'm going to jump into my demo here and show some tips and tricks for how I like to work with assets. So I'll go ahead and jump over. Okay, I've got it up on my screen and on the big screen. Okay. So this is a project that I'm working with for Archvizion. This is a project that came from an Archvizion customer. It is a Revit model that was handed to me. I took it into Twinmotion, and now I'm building it out in Unreal Engine. So as I spend more time here, I probably would spend a little more time, for instance, adding some fluctuation to the glass to make it have a little bit of a curve. I will continue to add in decals and different elements, but I first just want to talk about the, I guess, high-level view of how I'm using a lot of these assets. So you will see here, let me lower the screen a little bit, get a bigger viewport. So I have the foliage here. This, of course, is Quixel, as I mentioned. The trees here are coming from the Hillside Sample project. These are Quixel trees. I've got a little wind on them. They're ready to go. So as I said, I migrate these from my migration project or from Hillside, drag them in, and then I kind of paint them in the foliage. The hanging plants themselves are also with Quixel. And then throughout the scene, I have some posed characters that are RPCs. We have a MetaHuman here that we'll play around with later, and a few additional assets in the project from Twinmotion. Now, when I'm applying assets, I like to use the foliage tool. So I'm going to come over here to the selection mode, and you'll see that we have all of these different modes that we've worked with. If you've worked in Unreal, you probably have used this for landscape, modeling. I like to use the foliage tool for a lot of my assets. And this may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I'll showcase what that looks like here in just a moment. But first, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Archvizion. So as I mentioned, they do have the RPC asset that's available to you. And with those assets, there is a plugin that you can use. So here, if I go to Edit, Plugins, and then I type in Archvizion, you'll see there is an Archvizion RPC importer. So this doesn't come automatically with Unreal Engine. If you are interested in RPC at all, please come find me and I'll help get this plugin for you. But essentially, once you have it downloaded, then it's very easy to drag and drop assets into the scene. So to look at some of those assets, I'm going to pull up Avail. So Avail is a sister company of Archvizion, and they are a little bit more about content management. So they work a lot with companies that are using Revit to be able to filter different families, different assets. This includes trees and ready posed characters. And let's see if we got this going. Let me pull that up for us one more time. There we go, it's still loading. And essentially, what you can do is you can use this as a way to view all of your different RPC assets. So we'll see that if you've ever gone to Quixel, but you are working on a modern project, the furniture in Quixel is a little more historic than you may want to have in a modern scene. So I use RPC for a lot of the modern architecture elements. So sorry about that. Let me get this pulled up one more time. If not, I can showcase a different part of this. So while this is loading, I'm actually going to go ahead and just show the import process for RPC. So I'll come over here to this toolbar where the plugin has placed a little icon for Archvizion. And I'm going to go over to this import RPC. So here I have a lot of the RPCs downloaded, so we'll take a look at what they look like in a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and select one of these and bring it in. So I will pick this girl casual, probably a posed character. I'll hit OK. And what it's doing is in the background, it is importing it and bringing it down into the RPC folder down in the content browser. So if I select this, you'll see that I have all of the RPCs that I have brought in. And here we go. We have girl casual, smiling and ready to go. So this can be very helpful, especially like in film, if you're wanting to have just scale posed characters that you're using just for scale without having to bring a full MetaHuman in and adding on to the or slowing down the performance of your project. So with that, I do want to talk about how these can be used with the foliage tool. So not only do I use foliage for trees and plants, but I also use it for my entourage. So in order to do that, I'm going to open up the modeling once again here. And I'm going to go, not modeling. I'm going to go to the foliage tool. And I'm going to scroll down. You'll see that I have, obviously a lot of plants here, but I also have some furniture. So what's nice about this is you can drag and drop RPC assets or Twinmotion assets into the foliage and paint them just as you would in landscape. So if I come over to a balcony here, let me just go ahead and place one of these in. I'm going to use this chair here, and you can either paint or you can select single and individually place a few chairs here. If I needed to rotate that, I can go to select and select that, hit E on my keyboard, and then rotate it around. So essentially what this does is it puts all of my entourage on one layer. So that way it's easier for me to filter stuff off and on as I'm working. So in order to showcase that, I'm going to go over to my outliner tab, and I'll zoom out here a little bit, take a look at the bigger project. And so if I'm working and I just want to focus on lighting and materials, what I can do is I can go over to the outliner, type in foliage, and here under instance foliage actor, I can turn this off and on. So this way I'm getting all of my plants and everything turned off so I can focus on the project at hand. Now some of these assets I did come in with Twinmotion, so you'll see that there are some there, but I like to have them all on that one layer. It just makes things a little bit easier for me. Now, in addition to the assets that I'm bringing in, the Twinmotion, Sketchfab, and Quixel assets all come in and can be used with the foliage. The one thing that doesn't quite work is the decals. So I want to showcase just a few tips for working with the decals that I think can be very helpful. So as I mentioned, I really like to add decals to projects when I'm working on them. I would say even if in your architecture and you are working on a brand new building, it takes a year to build a building. You're going to see some wear and tear on it. So adding little details of decals or leakage will definitely take it to the next level for realism. So in order to do that, I'm going to go over to my content folder. I'm going to go over to the mega scans. I'll select the decals folder. And I'm going to turn on this filter of material instance. The way that I got this is if you go over to this icon here, you are able to filter by different settings or different items that you like. So I have my material instance selected. I have my MI leakage here. So I'm going to drag and drop this in underneath one of these windows. So if I drag and drop it in, you'll see that it's snapping to the surface. So I bring this up because not every Unreal Engine, I think by default this is not turned on. So I just want to showcase this to you in case you are not experiencing the same thing when you drag and drop something in. So this little icon here is the surface snapping button. So I believe by default this is turned off. And so let's take a look at what that looks like when you bring it in. So you'll see that you can kind of see that it's a decal. It looks nothing like what you saw in Quixel. If you try to maneuver around, it gets a little annoying of getting it to the right surface. So here with the surface snapping tool turned on, it goes on to the surface correctly. It's aligned to the normal, and then you can rotate it. So what I typically do is I use this rotation tool and keep this to 90 degrees whenever I'm applying decals so that I can quickly rotate it using W, E, and R on my keyboard, and then move it down, scale it around to get in place. So I have this, it's very subtle. You probably can barely see it because I have the opacity turned down a little bit. But what this does is just adds a little bit of variety to the projects and really takes it to the next level. So if I'm working on something where it's really zoomed in, I make sure I have scratches, leaks, little cracks, little dirt. It just really brings the project up to the next level. Now, one thing I do want to mention is when you are bringing in a lot of these assets, it can be very fun, especially if you're painting a bunch of things. Like I feel like I'm painting on a canvas, I'm dropping down trees, cars, people. And one of the things that you might not be aware of when you're working is how big the textures are when you're bringing them in. So one thing that I like to do, I typically do this once a week. The project that we see right now, I haven't done this, so we're going to do this together. And essentially, we're going to review the texture sizes that we've brought into the project. So in order to do this, you're going to go up to Tools. You'll go down to Audit, Statistics, and here you'll be able to sort the project by different elements. So right now I have the texture stats selected, And what this allows me to do is it allows me to sort the textures in my project to see exactly how much memory and space this is taking up. So you'll see that I'm working with some textures here that are 8K. These textures most likely do not need to be 8K, especially if you're working on large projects where you have a lot of data. These can be lowered. I typically like to work with 2K textures unless I'm using something in the foreground that I know needs to be really high detail. That's when I would use a higher texture size. So in order to take a look at these and change it, I'm going to select the name on the left-hand side. It's going to pop up with the asset. So I just picked one here that's 8K. This is one of the photogrammetry elements I've brought in. So if I click on this, you will see that it is a little side table. I do not need this to be 8K, so I'm going to lower this down. So in order to do that, you'll go over to the search tab, and you're going to type in maximum, and here you can select the maximum texture size. So I'll go ahead and select that to 2048 and hit enter, and then it is going to max that out. So essentially, what you can do is you don't have to worry too much about bringing in textures that are really high because you can control them inside of Unreal Engine. And what's nice about this is if I later down the road need to have a very focused view on this table, I can always go back and remove this and have it be 8K if I need it. But essentially when I am working with Quixel assets, I do usually bring them in at the medium quality. And then for materials that I know I need to have in at high quality, I do that at a higher quality. So I'll go ahead and I'll try to bring that up real quick and just show where that setting is in case you're not familiar. But as I mentioned, it's going to depend on how large your project is, if you're doing a vignette of something close to the foreground, and what texture size that you need. But while that is loading, I'll go ahead and showcase how to do this at a larger scale. So obviously that was one texture out of hundreds here. I have, looks like, several at 4K as well that I wouldn't want to have at 4K. So I'm going to expand this name section here. And as I scroll down, you'll see that I have some of the Quixel textures. The normals are at 4K, and this is absolutely not needed for a project of my size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the content folder. I'm going to go over to my mega scans, go to my surfaces. And what I'm going to do is in the search bar, I'm going to type in _in, because that is how Quixel names their assets or their textures. And I'm going to go ahead and select all of these. Once you have them all selected, you can right-click it and go up to Asset Actions. And then you're going to go down to the Edit Selection and Property Matrix. What this will allow me to do is to change all of these assets at once. So it's going to say, you're about to load 33 assets. That's a lot. You can say yes. That is okay. And so then it will pop up with all of the assets here. So essentially, you're doing the exact same thing. You'll go over to the right-hand side, type in max. You can set this to 2048. And then once you hit enter, it will start to do that in the background. Now, I do want to have just a word of caution for you. If you are doing this with a lot of assets, it's going to take some time. So if you hit enter and it feels like it's freezing, I promise it's not freezing, it's just working. So I won't hit enter here now because I don't want to freeze the program, but just wanted to give you a heads up that that might be the case if you're working with that. So I'll go ahead and pull up the bridge again, if I can get that going. And here we go. Got bridge. Is it loaded? It is not loaded. Okay, well, we'll try once more. I'll try to show you where the settings are if I can pull it up again. I will try once more to bring it up here. Oh, I thought I had it for a moment, but all is good. We will stick to our settings here. So once again, even if you are in Quixel and you have no idea how to set the settings or how to see how big the textures are coming in, you can always change them once they come into Unreal Engine. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and close out of the matrix there. I'll close out of the texture stats as well. And I am going to talk a little bit about MetaHumans now. So with this, I wanted to spend just a little bit of time finishing up with something a little more fun. And so with that, I'm going to take my MetaHuman here, and I am going to create an image with my MetaHuman with a little bit of an expression. So one of the nice things about using MetaHumans is that you can really storytell with them. Now, for someone who doesn't have a lot of animation background or work with characters very much, it can feel daunting to try to do some of these steps. But I'm here to say that if I can do it, you can do it, and we'll do it together here. It'll be a very simple application of how you can really utilize and leverage your MetaHumans in your scenes, and then hopefully you can take it on and do it for your own projects. So here with my MetaHuman, I'm going to set up a viewport, or set the viewport up to a camera that I would like to create. So I want this person to be in the foreground. I want a little bit of architecture in the background. This viewport looks good. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over to this top left icon, and I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna create camera here and select the Cine Camera Actor. So once I do this, it is going to pop it into the outliner on the right-hand side. So you'll see that we have this camera here. Now what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I'm looking through the camera so I see what my camera is seeing. And so in order to do that, I'll pull up the camera here. So now we have our camera set up. Our main point of person is blurry, so let's go ahead and fix that. I'll select the camera on the right-hand side in the outliner, go down to the camera component in the details panel, and I'm going to scroll down, and you can either use the eyedropper to select the object you would like to focus, or you can manually put this in. So I'll find, there we go, about 200. That looks good for now. Maybe zoom in a little bit. Okay, I won't get this perfect now, but you get the point. So now we have our camera set up. What we're going to do is we are going to create a level sequence that is going to store this camera and the facial expression we're going to bring in so that we can export it as an animation or as a high resolution rendering. So in order to do that, I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to go to this icon here and I'm going to add a level sequence. Now I already have a sequencer folder here, but if you don't have a folder, you can always right click, select new folder and name it sequences, sequencer, whatever you would like. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to my sequencer. I will name this MetaHuman Smile, hit enter, and you'll see that the sequencer now pops up at the bottom of the screen. So here we want to make sure that we add in our camera and our MetaHuman so that we can attach those two and store that information in this level sequencer. So in order to do that, I'm going to go over to the Add button on the left-hand side, and I'm going to the top, go to Actor to Sequencer, and I'm going to type in the camera name. So we've got our Cine Camera Actor 23. Hopefully in the future you would name yours better than just Cine Camera Actor 23, but this will work for now. And what I'm going to do is I also need to add in that MetaHuman as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to select the MetaHuman, go to Add, and now when you see I go to Actors to Sequencer, here Kellen's the name of the MetaHuman. I can easily add him into the project here. So now you'll see that a couple more windows popped up. Don't be scared by this. You won't have to use most of these windows or settings. What we're going to use is this Poses tab. So when you select the Poses tab, a Control Rig Pose window will pop up. Now, if you are doing this for the very first time, in your favorites, you'll probably just see something that says All and Content. You may not have this extra folders that I have here. So I'm going to walk you through how to add those extra folders in. In order to do that, you can right-click, select Add Existing Folder to View, and we're going to search and find the MetaHuman poses that we have access to. So essentially, whenever you add in your very first MetaHuman, you're getting a folder of common assets that you can utilize inside of Unreal Engine. So we are going to navigate to that by going to MetaHumans, Common. We'll do Common once again. And we are going to be looking for the pose library, Face. Now, I know this is our last steps. If this is too many steps, I've also done a video for this on YouTube that I can show you as well, where it has a lot of these. But essentially, we are going to go to this expressions folder or the face folder, and you can select OK. And it will automatically populate into your favorites, so then you have easy access to it. So essentially, I know this is a lot of opening up folders, but essentially I'm going to go over to this pose library, face, expressions, and then we finally have our pose library. So all of these poses come with MetaHumans, and you can use any of them if you would like. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to apply these to our person. So I'm going to select, we'll just select one here, And what we need to do is, in order to apply this pose to the MetaHuman, we need to select all of the control points of the face. So in order to do that, you'll go down to the sequencer. You're going to navigate to the Face tab, and you're going to open this up, and you're going to select all of these control rig points. If anyone has a tip for how to select all of these easily, let me know. The Select Immediate Children doesn't work here, so I'm just going to manually select them. You'll see that our viewport is showing that they're manually selected, and by all the little yellow points, I'm just going to hit G on my keyboard a few times to get rid of those so you all can see easily. But you'll still see that I have all of the blue elements here selected on the left-hand side. Now what we can do is we can go over to the right-hand side in the control rig pose, right-click on this, and select Paste Pose. So now we've got someone who's angry. We can have someone who's concerned. So maybe for film, this would be fun to have kind of all of these different emotions that you are trying to showcase. For architecture purposes, you probably would want to do joy or something a little friendlier, I would say. So once you have this pasted pose onto your person, it is now embedded into the sequencer. So essentially what you could do is you could create different frames if you wanted to key different expressions or emotions throughout a level sequence. You could do this very easily. You can start to manipulate the arms and stuff to get a pose that you want to. So it's pretty simple. I bring this up and I wanted to showcase this because this can add a lot of character and emotion to your projects and I guess upscale the realism that you're wanting to utilize in your projects and deliverables. So with that, I will go ahead and close out of this pose library. Now, if I wanted to take a high resolution screen photo or screenshot, you can do so by selecting this top icon on the left-hand side, going to high resolution screenshot. You could increase the size of this if you wanted to and hit capture, or you could use the movie render queue. So essentially what the movie render queue is going to do is allow you to use a higher resolution image or have control over a higher resolution imagery. So essentially you can go to Windows, Cinematics, let's see, movie render queue. You would hit the render button and then look for the sequencer that we created, which I think was Smile. Put that there, and then you could control all of the settings that you wanted to. So what's cool about this is if you're working with lower specs on your Unreal Engine, but really want to amp up the quality at the very end, you can control that here and then hit render. So this is obviously 150 frames, but you could just do one frame if you wanted to, if you're just doing a still image, that is available to you as well. So now that we kind of have worked through that portion for MetaHuman, I do want to go back to the Avail and see if that actually opened up. If not, as I mentioned, I'm here and available to chat with you about any of the Avail RPC or Archvizion assets, or even just Unreal Engine and Twinmotion. I learned a lot of this stuff myself, and I can understand how sometimes it can be daunting and scary and trying to figure out what's the best workflow for you and your industry. So I am here to try to assist you to the best of my abilities. And with that, it looks like the Avail is not quite opening. But once again, happy to showcase that tool with you. I'll have my computer around as well if you are interested. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up one more slide here. So if you want to contact me or Archvizion, we are here for you. You can find us at this email here. Then I will give you guys a few minutes back. And thank you so much for joining me today, taking your time to join this talk. I hope you had a great time, learned something new. I know I covered high level, a little more technical stuff, kind of bounced around, but happy to dive into anything more if you would like to learn. So thank you so much. Have a great day.